of Kenya. Kenyatta secured over 98% of the votes, and of course that voting process, a vote and then a rerun of the elections plagued by violent protests. The rerun followed a Supreme Court ruling which nullified the earlier results. The turnout for the latest rerun, which was boycotted by the opposition leader Raila Odinga, was just under 39% of more than 19.5 million registered voters. We're joined live now from Kenya by our reporter on the ground, Aldrin Sampear. Aldrin, how are these results, incredible 98% being received?
Well, certainly incredible results if you consider that it's 98% of the votes. So millions and millions of people who voted for Uhuru Kenyatta, close to 7 million, or rather, actually, it's just above 7 million, 7.4 million people who voted for him, which is 1 million less than those who voted for him in August the 8th. And when addressing the nation and addressing those spectators inside the auditorium, he spoke about this narrative that he doesn't have a clear mandate. And he made the argument that the turnout has been good, even though we consider that the turnout has been just less than 39%, where when you look at the August 8 elections, the turnout was close to 80%, which was also a record high. And this time we are looking at a record low. And looking at Chebokati, the SABC chairperson, declaring these elections free and fair and credible. And I was saying earlier on that this is the subject for probably a hotly contested debate that will take place from now on, going on, as well as when the observers release their reports from tomorrow on with regards to what they've observed in these elections. Let me just quickly bring in our correspondent here in Kenya, Sarah Kimani. Sarah, quite an interesting time, and listening to the president disputing the argument that he does not have a clear mandate. He says that even what happened the last time around, these people came out again and ensured that he secures this victory.
Indeed, he called it a revalidation. He's calling this election victory a revalidation of his win on August the 8th. And he went on to really talk about August the 8th, talking about the painful memories of having to go through another election. But he also castigated his main opponent, Raila Odinga, who withdrew from this race, saying that he absconded a race that he had subjected the country to. And he said Raila decided to choose which part of the ruling by the Supreme Court to respect and to obey.
You know, something quite strange that I found in his speech is that while many thought that his speech might be a speech of reaching out to the constituencies who haven't participated in this vote, because now the IEBC has taken the decision that those 4 counties will not participate and went ahead and declared the election, that the president will come out and reach out to those people and say we are reaching out. There was even no mention of the number of people who died during the process of these elections. But the IEBC chairperson, on the other hand, even gave a moment of silence. There was a moment of silence in the auditorium for some IEBC officials, as well as Kenyan citizens who lost their lives during this process.
I think because President Kenyatta recognizes that it's not over until it's over. There's going to be another 14 days of uncertainty in Kenya when we know that petitions will be launched at the Supreme Court of Kenya. Already, one human rights activist has already moved to the Supreme Court. We await a major decision from Raila Odinga, the leader of official opposition, tomorrow at 10 o'clock on the way forward. Probably the reason why Kenyatta decided not to reach out now, because there's still this announcement that is awaited. And also a lot of people pushing for dialogue. Kenyatta making it clear that he can only talk about dialogue after the legal battles and the legal challenges that he will face from here on are done.
And actually slamming there Raila Odinga, saying you can't choose to exercise your right, and then when you get what you want, you abscond on the consequences thereof. And the consequences of declaring this result is now being seen on the streets of Kenya, here in Nairobi, as well as in Kibera, some strongholds of NASA, people going on violent protest already in retaliation to this declaration.
Unsurprisingly, in areas that Raila Odinga commands support, we have seen immediately after Chebukati made the announcement. Remember, in the 4 counties where the election was suspended, that has now been cancelled. There are about 1.7 million Kenyans who will not vote. One, because some of them decided that they were boycotting the elections. Others, because the protests by NASA supporters prevented them from getting to the ballot. So already 1.7 million people will not vote. But today, his supporters, Odinga supporters, have come out on the streets here in Nairobi, in Kibera, in Kawangware, in the middle of the city. We've seen police lobbing tear gas to disperse protesters who are already feeling aggrieved by the declaration of President Kenyatta as a winner.
These violent protests happen on the day, on the eve of 1.7, close to 1.7 million pupils, school children who will be going to school to write their final exams. And we've heard from the IBC chairperson, we've also heard from the President Uhuru Kenyatta, saying that let's allow these pupils to write these exams. What's the security plans like to make sure that these exams go ahead uninterrupted?
This is a sad time for young Kenyans who must sit. We have matric, the equivalent of matric examinations already ongoing in various parts of the country. They're talking about 1.5 million matriculants who already sit in the examinations. Tomorrow, those who are finishing their primary school begin to sit their examinations. Today, the Education Cabinet Secretary, who is also the Interior Minister, Fred Matiang'i, was on a tour trying to see if everything is all set, and his convoy was attacked in one of the areas here in Nairobi by people who were protesting his presence, because he has been accused, together with the police, of using excessive force to disperse protesters, and yet they argue that protesting is a right here, and it is guaranteed in the Constitution. So it is going to be a very tough time. Today, when we spoke to him, he said examinations will go on, including in areas that are seen as violent hotspots, and for that they have put more than 2 police officers per school. Initially, they used to only have 2 police officers. Now children will do examinations with more than 2 police officers.
Wow, what a time in Kenya. Our correspondent there, Sarah Kimani, speaking to us about the elections, the retaliation to the elections, and that all the important exams that will be written tomorrow by the equivalent of their matriculants, 1.5 million, as well as those who will be finishing their matric, making the number up to 1.7 million who will be sitting down to write these exams. A level of uncertainty, one can imagine. I see that the U.S. Embassy in Kenya has also issued a communique advising its citizens to stay indoors, that there will be protests, remain indoors up until a new communication is issued to them saying that their place is safe. But of course, myself and Sarah Kimani will keep you guys up to date with regards to the latest developments of what's happening here in Kenya and the reaction to these elections.
Thank you very much, Aldrin St. Pierre and Sarah Kimani, and we do hope those protests ongoing in Kenya do turn out to be more peaceful than expected, given the concerns at the moment. We take a short